So today's Tuesday, and I wanted to give sort of like a basic explanation of how yo-yo stuff works. I know a lot of you are watching because you're a friend of mine or something and you don't do this, and so you don't know what's going on. The most common question I get is the yo-yo spinning the whole time? And yes. The gyroscopic effect allows us to do stuff with the yo-yo, but only while it's spinning as fast as it can. As soon as it starts to slow down, it stops trying to stay in that same plate, in that same axis, and then you get lots of tilting and drooping, and then it all just kind of goes to crap. So the whole time you're doing tricks, it's spinning like this, and as long as it's spinning, I can do stuff, and I can swing it any direction, and it generally tries to stay in the same plane unless I tilt it too far and the string puts pressure on it, which makes it tilt and get off axis, and then it starts to die. Because if it stops spinning, then it just kind of wobbles around like this, and that would be really hard to get it to like land on the string or do anything useful. So that's part of the challenge is, can you do these tricks, and can you keep everything precise enough that you don't cause the string to rub on the yo-yo, which either puts pressure on it and causes it to tilt, or just rubs on the edge enough that it causes the spin to slow down. So this is what they call an unresponsive yo-yo. If you've seen yo-yos like when you were a kid, you probably at least saw what they call a responsive yo-yo, where you go down, and then if you just tug it, it comes back up. Where this is an unresponsive yo-yo, so that if I tug on it, nothing happens. And this just means I can do more tricks. Different kinds of tricks that normally wouldn't work because that would cause a responsive yo-yo to just suck the string back up and come back to your hand. So instead, you have to do a whole separate technique called a bind, which is something like that, to force it to wind back up after you've done your trick. Like, this seems like a lot extra, but it's actually not too hard to learn. In about a day or so of messing around with one of these, you can get it. The most basic version of a bind would just be to go like this, and then you just have to get used to catching it when it comes back at your hand. Otherwise, tricks are generally either an entirely new element by itself or some combination of existing elements. So you have some basic elements. They call this a trapeze. And this is the same thing, only we've wrapped some string around the other finger in addition. We have things like hooks, like this. And we have things like green triangles, where if I were to just let this go, it would guaranteed be a knot. But if I undo it with a maneuver like that, then it's safe to wind up without getting a knot. So the fact that it would be a knot if I dropped it or messed something up adds to the impressiveness of the trick, right? Because then you have to even more do it precisely. Otherwise, you get to stop and undo a knot instead of continue to yo-yo. We also have things like slacks, which involve big loose loops of the string like that. So different combinations of these things and wrapping string around different fingers or arms, or even some tricks go around your neck or your leg, makes an interesting trick. And the more of this you can chain together, the cooler it looks, and the higher it would score if you were doing some sort of competition. I found that yo-yoing is one of the friendlier niche communities to get involved with. Generally, yo-yoers are just happy to talk about yo-yo and to talk about collecting or discuss the trick they're working on. And it doesn't really matter if all you can do is this, or if you're doing more elaborate things like this. They're pretty happy either way, happy to encourage you to try something, encourage you to keep going. You don't need to be at a certain level for people to accept you and count you as part of the group, which I think is really nice. It can also get sort of overwhelming at first if you were to watch somebody's freestyle competition or something. You see a lot of elaborate tricks going on, there's lots of string everywhere, and I definitely felt that too, and it's totally fine, right? You just ignore that for now and learn to do the tricks that you can. The more you learn to do tricks yourself, the easier it is to recognize the kinds of things that someone else is doing. It's a lot like skateboarding in that way, where if you don't skate at all, it might be hard to tell the difference between a kickflip and a laser flip, and what are those and what's the difference, and it all happens so quickly, how can you tell? But if you skate yourself and you learn to do some of those things, it's a lot easier to recognize the trick. Also, if you go to look for yo-yos online, you're going to find a huge range of prices. Some of them get as expensive as $300 or $400 because they're made out of titanium and only 5 of them were ever made or something. But that stuff doesn't really matter, and you could totally get by on something that's more like $10 or $15. It's mostly just a personal preference and what you think looks cool and what you can afford. I don't have any of this fancy titanium stuff, and it's kind of okay. I would certainly try it if I had the opportunity, but I don't really feel like spending my money on it. So here's the trick I've been working on most recently. It's not totally clean yet, but I've got all the steps there. And now I just have to get it down a little more consistently, a little more smoothly, so that it's not such a struggle to do. Well, that's all for today, and thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll figure this trick out a little better soon.